Board. And welcome everyone for our final webinar of the year in the Intentional Success webinar series. We're going to talk about 2019, the year in review, but we're also going to look at the year ahead. I am your host and presenter, Tom Stimson, president of the Stimson Group. I'm a business advisor of the AV industry. Here's all the places you can find me. Of course, I love emails. Send me emails. I love the questions. I love to talk to you guys on Facebook as well. Join the AV Matters Facebook group, and we have a lot of great discussions going on there. Lots of ways to engage with me. If you're not my client, if you are my client, hey, pick up the phone. Now, why are we having this webinar? There's always got to be a good reason behind this. I want to give you some methodology for reviewing your business year, how you talk about that, how you look at it as a management team and an ownership team. I'm going to get some goal setting thoughts moving forward for you for next year. I'm going to give you some outlooks and recommendations, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to start off with the end of the year assessment. We're going to look into 2020. You'll see a little bit into my crystal ball and what I'm seeing in the future. And then I'm going to give you a few things I'm going to recommend that you try in 2020. I had a great list last year. Many of you did those things, and I'm going to build on that this year. I think that's where the real fun is, so stay around for that. Now, I've got a lot to cover today. I normally do about 25 slides. I've got 50, so I'm going to move fast, but don't hesitate to put a question in the Q&A box, and I will get to it, particularly on the topic that we're discussing at the moment. So this is how to evaluate your year and convey it to your stakeholders and employees, so your end-of-the-year business assessment. I'm going to take these in steps in order of priority in terms of when you should discuss it. So typically, you're going to sit down with your management team and you're going to talk about how the year went. But here's the order that you would do it in. Number one thing I start these conversations with is I talk about culture. Now, many of you will say, hey, we want to talk about culture, but we're going to put it as the last thing on our list. If you've been attending a lot of Jumpstart workshops, you'll know that we've had a couple of presenters who in particular spoke about culture and the importance of putting culture first on there, and I subscribe to that. If you make culture your last topic, it's the thing that's going to get cut and won't get talked about, and culture affects everything else on the list. So start off with this discussion, and think of it this way. We're starting at the 100,000-foot view, and we're working our way down to the 10,000-foot view where we can make some impact with tactics. And I know you guys want to talk tactics. Let's stay away from there for a moment. Let's talk culture. Ask these questions. What have we done as management to preserve and improve our company culture? So quickly, give yourself a score and an assessment on how well you've done as management to improve your company culture. And then talk about the employees. Which employees have made significant contributions to your culture, and what did they do to do that? How does that look like? What are we trying to reinforce? Because cultures are very important to, well, every one of you that I've ever met. Culture is a very important part of your business. So let's give this some thoughtful discussion and look at what you've done, how well it's worked, what you want to do more of, and who, most importantly, is doing it, because we want to reinforce and empower those people to continue to promote our culture. Now we'll move down a little bit out of the clouds and talk about reviewing progress towards goals. Now, hopefully you had some goals for 2019, and I realize it's been a long year, and whatever goals you had last January probably vaporized sometime in February. But go back and talk about your goals. You wrote them down somewhere, you had a meeting about it, bring them back up. The fact that they vaporized is an important discussion point. We need to understand, maybe we need to be better at goal setting. So how did you do on the goals? Why did you do well? Why did you do poorly? Why? And then what are you going to do to make 2020 better? Now, goal setting is a little bit of an art form in and of itself. So learning how to create achievable goals, or goals that will support the overall goals of the business, is a bit of an art. You have to learn from your mistakes. So what are you going to do to make your goal setting for 2020 better? So we're reviewing this year. You may have more meetings about 2020 goals. How did you do in 2019? What's going to make it better? Now, moving down closer to the ground, we're going to talk a little bit about the employees and your team. And let's talk about which employees have exceeded expectations and why. What is it they did that exceeded expectations? We need to acknowledge this, at least in our minds, because we may have a valuable asset that might be misapplied or underutilized. So talk about the people who have done really well for your business and what are the stories that go behind that. You have employees that have demonstrated some untapped talents or skills. In my practice, when I come into your organizations and work with you, whether it's change management or just making some finesse moves to improve your business, we often find people who are very good at something we didn't know about because we never asked them. We never put them in the right position to do that. So it's very exciting when we find these untapped talents or skills. So you've probably found some this year. And then talk about who needs more support and where that's going to come from. Now, I know the tendency is kind of to identify the people who are problematic and what are we going to do to get rid of them and when are we finally going to make that decision, blah, 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 blah. That might be the elephant in the room. Focus first on the people who need more support and agree on where that support is going to come from. Retaining employees, especially in an economy like we have right now, where the economy is very strong, unemployment is extremely low, having to replace people is much more expensive than it is in other economies. We want to retain good people. And sometimes that means that we have to dedicate resources to make them successful and help them stay around. So have that discussion. We're gathering knowledge for the team. Then we get into the financial review stuff. And I know a lot of you want to start here, but don't start here. Have those other conversations because they provide context for what you're going to learn in financial review. Now, there's a lot of numbers you can look at. I'm going to try and focus on a few things here to make this end of the year meeting as productive as possible. First of all, look at a 5-year trend. Just get me 5 years, high-level data, the dollar amount in revenue dollars, cost of goods sold percentages, the dollar value of your expenses, and the percentage of expenses that go to revenue, and then your profit percentages. So just a very high-level view of the past 5 years, because you need to know where you've been, how you're trending, so that we don't get caught up with the results of this year. I don't know how many of you how many times I've caught you telling me that, oh man, we had a fantastic year, we grew 20%. And then completely glossing over the fact that last year you shrank 30%. So you're actually doing less volume than you were 2 years ago, but we gloss over that and we keep hiring people and adding infrastructure because we think we're growing, but we're not looking at the long-term trends. So let's start off looking at our 5-year trends. And then do a 2-year trailing 12-month P&L comparison. I know what you want to do right now. You want to compare all of 2018 and 2019. You don't have all of 2019 done. You're going to make up some numbers to get that right. My recommendation is if you're doing this week or next week in December, look at November through the end of November. So it'd be December of 2017 through November of 2018. December of 2018 through November of 2019, 2 full years, 2 trailing 12 months P&L comparisons, and then you're going to look at some key performance indicators, and I'll talk more about those in a minute. So here's a fairly typical 5-year comparison. We got 5 years, the different lines of revenue, the different major cost of goods sold roll up, and we can create a little chart that says, here are my sales are tracking. So on the charts on the right, you'll see the solid lines, the dark blue line is the year-to-year sales. The dotted line is the trend line. So even though this company had a down year in 2018 on this 5-year plan, the overall trend is actually going upwards. So we want to be aware of that because sometimes we need to redirect our conversation and our focus off of negative when there's an actual positive story here about trending upwards. But we get down here to gross profit and we see that while gross profit stayed the same even though their revenue dropped, the trend line for gross profit is flat for all revenue types. We want our gross profit to increase as our revenue increases, so this might be worth discussing and understanding what's affecting that. And then we get down and we look at our income or our loss, and it's all over the map. but the trend line is going down. This is very typical for what I would see in this era. Is a lot of companies, you're doing volumes you've never done before, but you're still, your profit structure is still designed to be a smaller organization. And so your profits tend to suffer. A lot of times I'll find companies who are aging out and their costs are increasing because they have long-time employees who are getting paid more than what the market rate is, or are not as productive as what somebody from the current market might be. And so this final measurement of income versus loss is very, very important for all of this. So there's your high level view. Now we can talk about some key performance indicators. Now, under revenue, I want to do some comparisons between my revenue and the costs, the direct cost for these things. So if I have labor revenue, I can go down to my cost of goods sold and look at the direct cost of labor and compare those two. Now, very often you will find, and it becomes very disappointing when you realize that your direct costs on labor exceed your labor revenue. And there's reasons for that, because your direct costs will also include non-revenue generating personnel, like your warehouse team, your prep team, your quality control team, your drivers, who are a continual cost but may not track with revenue. But still, it's a very valuable comparison, particularly when you keep it over time. I'm going to look at revenue. I'm going to look at the ratio of labor revenue to equipment revenue. There's an ideal amount for the type of business that you're in. If you're a production rental company, it might be 30% labor, 70% equipment rentals. But if you're a corporate event staging company, it might be 50-50. If you're a pure rental company, it might be 10% labor, 90% rentals. So figure out what's right for your business and track that and see how you're doing. If your profits start to flag a little bit, this is one of the first ratios I look at, because it tells me how we're selling. Under cost of goods sold, you've got your big, maybe it's sub-rentals, it's your travel costs, logistic costs, things that are very easy to track from month to month, year to year, as a percentage of revenue. See how we're doing on those things. Another KPI I would look at this time of year is my discount off of retail. And this includes comps and credits, which I'll bring up again later on in this webinar. If you have to give money back, that's technically a discount off of retail. You did the work, but you didn't get paid for it. It's the same thing as a discount. So track the value of those things. This is not a P&L thing. This is generally going to be done on a spreadsheet separately. But we want to know what that number is, and that's a number we can manage to and improve. And then you have unsold direct labor. Anytime I put somebody in the field that I'm not billing for, there's generally a reaction. That's generally a reaction to something that you can control and manage. Now, that's something that I might track, particularly if you're going through some change management, or you're trying to reconcile the differences between how your sales organization sells and how your operational organization wants to deliver. This is something that usually falls by the wayside. And so that's a number that we might want to track. The next thing I want to talk about in this year-end review is how you're going to conduct your year-end meeting. Now, many of you have probably already had that meeting. It's now the middle of December, and I may be behind the 8 ball for you on this. But there's nothing wrong if you haven't had that meeting with saying that you're going to have it in January and kick off and call it the beginning of the year meeting, but you have to recap the end of the year. But here's what I do in the end of a year meeting. The agenda is very simple. I talk about the year in review, and I'll go through the elements of that program. We'll talk about goals for next year. We'll talk about the plans and the projects that are related to those goals so that we can see the connection. And then we're going to recognize employees, efforts, projects, whatever it might be, whatever recognition we need to give here at the end of the year, we will do that last. So my year in review section, we'll start with some financial results. You have to measure something. Let's give our audience a measurement. You don't have to show them detailed P&L. I do like to at least show them revenue numbers and gross profit numbers. And we can remind people that that gross profit has to pay for a lot of things, a lot of sales, a lot of admin, a lot of building, a lot of supplies. insurance, all that kind of stuff, but we can show them the numbers that your employees can typically affect, which is gross profit. You have to tell them whether these are good results or bad results because they don't know. So comparing it to some prior years, maybe show them that 5-year trend line and say, here's what we're doing, here's where we should be, and then talk about what you did well. So if you have had some success stories, tell that story, institutionalize the success stories from this year and document them so you can tell them again and again, because we want to copy those successes. So part of the year in review is talk about what you did well, talk about how you did it. So if some of your success this year comes from the planning that you did a year ago, then tie those two things together so people can see the results. Hey, we talked about this, so we did this, and here's the result. That's a great message to deliver at the end of the year, and it also ties into what you're going to do for next year. So, and then also talk about what that means for the future. So whatever happened this year affects what happens in the future. This is where you make that tie-in. If you didn't have a successful year, then that's going to create some need for changes in the future. So you can talk about, hey, we're going to make some changes, or we're going to do more of something, which brings us into next year's goals. For next year, again, start at financial. Talk about the financial goals. You know, what this means to employees. If you have a profit sharing plan, help them understand where profit sharing gets its money from. Okay? Connect that back to employees. Update on any bonus or profit sharing plan that you have. You may change these every year. The criteria don't have to remain the same every year. Matter of fact, I would recommend you update them often. And you want to choose measurable criteria. You want to get away from the idea of entitlements that this always happens and connect it back to some sort of measurable performance thing. And then focus on the thing that you're trying to accomplish that year. If you're doing great on revenue, but you want to improve your gross profit, make sure that your bonus and profit sharing plans are tied to improvements in gross profit. It's just that simple. Now, to do everything you're going to do next year, you need to talk about the projects and initiatives that have to take place in order for you to do that. You just can't wave a magic wand to say, we're going to lower costs and glare at everybody. What are we going to do to help that? So what are the initiatives that you're going to take? Every initiative, every project has to have a project owner. We need to define who the owner of that project is. We need to express exactly what authority they have. You need to discuss how you're going to measure the progress of that project and what's the goal. Okay? And then you have to talk about milestones and deadlines. When are we going to get it done? You know, dates are real and measurements are real. This project is complete when we move our inside direct labor from 19% of revenue to 17% of revenue. Okay? Or this project will be completed and all the requirements fulfilled by July 1. Make it something finite and then revisit in your regular, hopefully monthly meetings with your teams. And then in the recognition section, this is where we come back. This is where we bring the culture back in. You need to be culturally consistent and on brand with how you do recognition. I also will caution everybody here to, while it may be a little bit late for this year, in the future, look at separating how you do holiday gifts from business bonuses. My typical advice to business owners is that if you're going to give people a holiday gift, a Christmas present, a little extra something at the Christmas dinner, that's a holiday gift. Treat it as a gift. And in order to make it a gift, it should not come out of your business. If you're a privately held business, that gift should actually come from the owners through a separate means, a separate account, a cash, a personal check, something like that. Separate it from the business. It will make it much, much more valuable. Business bonuses are tied to some sort of profit sharing or other measurement that are doled out, and you can budget for these things. So make sure that they see some distinction between the business did really well. here's a bonus or here's our profit sharing for the next year versus thank you all for being here. Here's a gift. Enjoy your holidays. And make sure those two things are clearly separated. So I'll pause here if you've developed some questions. I know I'm working very, very quickly, but I've got 3 sections I want to get covered today. And the quick question here coming in about holiday gifts. So the essence of the question is we traditionally give holiday gifts and we gross them up. And so for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that if you want to give somebody a $500 gift and you're giving it out of the business, it's technically income, so you have to take taxes out of it. So if you want them to end up with $500, you gross it up and you're ending up giving them, $600 or $592 minus Social Security, FICA, and all that kind of stuff, netting out $500. So that's called grossing up. I'm not giving you tax advice. Go ask your CPA how to handle gifts. But if the gift comes from an individual, you have different rules apply about how that affects that individual's taxes. But you can give your employees gifts outside of the business. Talk to your CPA, understand the ramifications of that. A lot of them are going to say, no, we want you to do it this way. Please understand you're sacrificing some of the impression of it being a gift. So I'm giving you my recommendation. Please listen to your fiduciary advisors. Thanks for the question. All right. Again, if you have a question, use the Q&A box. You'll see it on your control panel there. You might have to reach up if it's wandered off your screen. And moving on. Keep adding questions. We'll get back to them. So let's talk about 2020. How do we determine what our year is going to look like? What's going to happen? I mean, we don't know, right? But we have a lot of indicators that tell us something about the upcoming period. And it may not apply for the entire year, but it applies for a foreseeable future. So here are some of the things that I'm looking at right now when I'm making an assessment of what the near future holds. These are called leading indicators. Lead times are an important leading indicator. Okay, look at when these things actually happen. Are your annual clients who have one event a year, when are they re-engaging with you? How far in advance of projects are you getting new RFPs or seeing new business? How far in advance are you getting inquiries? All of this data starts to turn in, if we collect that and quantify it, this reflects what our lead times are. How far ahead are you getting line of sight into business? And we want to track this because as lead times shrink, okay, as lead times get shorter, we have to switch from selling strategically to selling excess capacity. When our lead times get longer, we're going to focus on getting the right customer at the right value. In other words, we can be a little bit choosier or pickier about what business that we do. So if someone is shopping on price and your lead times are long and they're shopping on price way in advance, you can force them into the last minute shopper category, or you can say, look, I can give you that kind of last minute shopper pricing for excess capacity, but you have to pay me in advance. So start to have a better understanding of how these leading indicators affect the way that you sell. Leading indicators will also dictate what your confidence is in your forecast. So typically I'm looking at a 30, 60, and 90-day forecast. As we get closer, my confidence in the forecast is going to go up. So if I have a 30-day forecast and I'm not confident in it, that's a leading indicator that there's volatility in my marketplace that might adversely affect my business. However, if I've got a 90-day forecast and I'm highly confident in it, that means that I've got pretty long lead times, at least for our industry, and I can move forward with a lot more confidence about the decisions that I make. And then there's a surprise factor. How often are you surprised with windfalls and last-minute requests that are valuable business? You know, where customers are saying, hey, we have extra money, let's do this. Or your clients, your annual clients are adding budget and surprising you saying, hey, we've got more budget this year, we've got this cool thing we want to do. How often is that happening? If it only happens occasionally, we don't want to build our business plan on the assumption that that's going to happen more, because occasional is not a trend. So look at your leading indicators. We'll talk a little bit about macro views versus micro views. Macro view is, let's call that the world view, and micro views, we'll look at that as the tactical view. So in the macro view, I'm going to pay attention to what my customers' economic views are. If your customers think the economy is going to hell in a handbasket, to them it is. And if I've got a handful of customers that think the economy is great and a handful of customers that think the economy is bad, that's just information that's going to affect the overall view that says there's a lot of volatility out there. Now, there are exceptions to that. For instance, in up economies like we have now, where the economy is generally very, very strong, corporations are spending a lot of money. They have good budgets. There's not a lot of pushback on price, or not the pushback that we're used to. But I might have a segment of business like direct selling. In up economies, direct selling doesn't do as well as it does in down economies, when people are taking on second and third jobs. And direct selling tends to prosper in down economies. So there is a yin and a yang to how the macroeconomics works. Look at your trends. Is it a national trend or a regional trend? Sometimes we see national trends that don't help us regionally, and sometimes we see regional trends that don't affect us nationally. Your marketplace, the amount of business that you do in that market, does matter. So that's part of your macro view. Look at your unemployment trends. While we have 4% unemployment nationwide, or less than 4% in the US, there are parts of the country where unemployment's in double digits. There are parts of the country where unemployment is almost non-existent. So take your regional data on this and put that into your macro view. And then volatility. This is the the MBA degree talking here, saying if you're seeing a lot of volatility or irrational changes in indexes, that should affect your view. Honestly, right now we're not. We've been seeing, at least in the stock markets, fairly steady. They're not overreacting or overswinging to crazy news. And trust me, in the US, we have crazy news every day. So the markets have gotten very, very used to that. If there is a big change in the market now, we would probably trust that to be a leading indicator, because it's not going to be because of a tweet, though it could be, right? Now, in micro views, look at your costs. Micro views is, what's the cost of labor for you? What are the costs of subrentals for you? What are the price, and what's your close rate on the quotes that you're writing? What are the trends on payments? Are your clients paying you on time, or are they stretching you out to 90 and 120 days? We need to take this information and help us determine what's really going on in our marketplace and how it's going to affect us. When I see clients stringing out payments, I see my close rates go down. I see my labor costs going up. I see subrentals getting harder to source. These are not good. These are not good for me. This is making it hard for me to make money and keep a viable business. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments. On the other hand, if labor becomes highly negotiable and you can get good labor at good rates, subrentals are plentiful, which means they're very negotiable. Your close rate is trending high. Clients are paying in advance or on time. These are fantastic news. It gives me a lot of confidence to expand my business. So my crystal ball, and I've touched on a couple of these things already. At the macro view, I see, we've got this low unemployment. We have low interest rates. The recession that we've been all watching for hasn't happened. I've been visiting with a lot of folks here the past couple of weeks in my social networks and asking them about their businesses and how the impending recession, and everybody agrees, from the real estate developers down to people making widgets, that there is a recession coming. But I haven't found anybody who's really seeing the leading indicators that say it's imminent. I'm not seeing a lot of change in behavior, though I'm sure there are some industries where we will see that soon. That means that our labor costs are going to continue to rise, but you should expect more when you pay more. So expect more, get more, but you're going to have to pay more for the labor, particularly if you're trying to fill positions right now, which means that you should focus more on your company, internal training and retention of people. Replacing an employee is very expensive right now. You've got a good employee, do what you can to retain them, develop your own training programs. It also means that stay in your lanes. This is not the economy to suddenly branch out and say, hey, we're going to take on a completely new line of business and basically create a startup in a new region or a new product line, a new service. This is not the right time to do that because your costs are going to be pretty high. It also reduces your nimbleness. And right now we're riding on the peak of an economy. Stay nimble. Be ready to downsize or make adjustments at any time. Don't overcommit your resources. So there's my macro view for 2020. I think we can go into 2020 with a fair amount of confidence, but some caution. On the micro view, labor law compliance is becoming huge. California's SB 50 is going to seriously affect the entire industry. I'm an advocate for labor, so I actually think this is a good thing. Those of you who know me, I've been writing about labor and staffing practices for almost 20 years. I think 99% of what you subcontract is actually W-2 labor, and you need to follow the law. Don't subsidize your profit by ignoring the law, and using the excuse, well, this other guy's doing it, and it's the only way I can be competitive. Really, to me, that's a moral failing. You need to look at the morals. If you can't do business legitimately and remain competitive, then there's something wrong. There's something that we need to look at and figure out how to help you be better at that. You're competing with the wrong people. There's always going to be people out there who are going to skirt the rules, take shortcuts. If you're on this call, if you're listening to me, you're probably not a company that is one of those types of companies. You're looking seriously at running your business as legitimate. Let's find the legitimate way of doing it. Let's find out how to make the numbers work for you. All of you can be profitable. You just might need to retool your formula about how you get there. I'm seeing a lot of great staffing stuff going on. The outsourced labor pool is getting better and better, more organized. It's increasing. I'm seeing more and more organizations reduce their inside staff and relying more on outside staff to get their seasonal work done, show projects in particular. Take advantage of that. That will help you be profitable and scalable. But because of those two previous bullet points, labor prices, rates are going to continue to rise significantly. And honestly, in the past 30 years, our labor rates have only gone up about 2%. It's crazy. Our rental rates have gone up almost 6%, but our labor rates have only gone up 2% over 30 years. There's a lot of room to increase your labor rates. Matter of fact, at the last Jumpstart workshop in November on management, we had a number of attendees there who gave testament to the fact that they have raised their labor rates, often to my advice, but certainly the market should tell them they should do that, and got next to no pushback at all from their customers. So this is found money. They helped make their companies more profitable, and they probably increased their perception of value by looking, who's a better plumber? The guy's $50 an hour, or the guy's $150 an hour? Raising your labor rates would probably do a lot to improve your outward appearance of value. So that's what I'm seeing in the microeconomic view of the world. Now, let's talk about some things that you might want to try in 2020. And I think I've done this by, sales, marketing, operations, finance. You know me. So in sales, when you go to a restaurant and the wait person messes up, or the kitchen brings your order out wrong, or the food is not good, Isn't it great when the manager goes over there and apologizes and says, I'm going to comp your entree, and oh, by the way, here's some free desserts. And all of a sudden, you quickly forget about everything. You sit back and you finish enjoying your meal. We can do the same thing in our businesses. I'm recommending that you guys figure out how to increase your comps and credits to your customers. This means you have to own up faster to mistakes. Matter of fact, if you know you made a mistake and you know the client's going to want money back, go to them before they know the mistake was even made. Tell them what happened. Tell them the adjustments that you've made to fix the problem, but also the adjustments you're making to their bill. This really does help develop buyer loyalty. So look at the value in that. It works in every industry, but many of you I see go to great efforts to avoid ever giving clients money back. And you come unglued when you have to give a client a credit. When the fact those credits, and you're going to have to make them anyway, but let's turn that credit that we're giving back to the customer as an asset for our relationship and use it to improve our relationship. The other thing I want you to do is stop haggling. Your price is your price. The reason so many of you have to haggle is because you don't actually know what your costs are, so you don't know what the price needs to be. So everything seems to be negotiable, and it becomes about winning revenue, when in fact, you're not really trying to win revenue, you're trying to win gross profit. So if you're better at determining your costs, you have more confidence in what your price is, and your price is your price. I'd rather see you negotiate something like payment terms and saying, hey, yeah, I can give you the better price, but you need to pay me up front. Or, well, you're paying me in 120 days per your agreement, so here's my price. Because we've got to fund that 120 days of waiting. So quit haggling. Your price is your price. Find people who are willing to pay you what you're worth, which means you have to have a bigger pipeline, a stronger pipeline, which leads right into marketing. Your sales pipeline is everything. That's most of your confidence. That's most of your ability to do business, retain employees, keep the doors open. Marketing is no longer optional for you. 80% of your pipeline is directly tied to your marketing efforts. The rest of it is that word of mouth. So many of you tell me about, oh, our business is all word of mouth. Well, that's great if you get some word of mouth business. How much more word of mouth business would you get if you actually had some marketing to go behind that? So without that marketing, you're going to struggle to raise your prices, to attract talent, to attract customers, to keep customers because somebody else is going to market them away from you, to keep your margins up. Sometimes it's even hard to get suppliers if your marketing is not good. Right? So marketing is not optional. It's got to be part of your business. If you've got 20 employees, one of them should be a full-time person dedicated to marketing work. Things that are going to improve your market position, your brand recognition, customer recognition of who you are and what you stand for, and what your internal team understands about your business. Marketing is very, very important. In operations, again, these are all messages I'm telling all of my clients right now. These are things that we've been working on all year and we'll continue to work on next year, and I'm sharing those with you. In operations, the deprep, that receiving the equipment, so operations starts when the truck backs up to the door and the show you just finished comes out. When you tip the truck back into the warehouse, that's when operations start. You start with checking in, deprepping, and do quality control. These things add value to your business, and the way they do that is to reduce the time needed to do prep work. Many of your operations are set up to give yourself an enormous amount of time to do prep by ignoring deprep and QC until you actually need it, which is exactly backwards. It's nonsensical. It's like going to McDonald's, ordering a hamburger, and they go out and they slaughter a cow to do it in that order. No, you've got to do these things in advance so that you can turn equipment quickly, you can prep shows better and more accurately in less time. That's where you're going to create value in your rental production business. In 2020, you also need to build your bench. You've got all these freelance resources out there. Develop a freelance pool, but have a permanent warehouse and ops team. So what I'm saying is quit stealing your warehouse crew to go out and do shows so that you can save money, and I'm making air quotes with my fingers. That does not save you money. It reduces the amount of resources you have to do TD prep and quality control on your business. Again, it's a backwards way of looking at things. Just take people out of your warehouse and throw them on show site. There's a full-time career in there. Matter of fact, I just got I have a course that I'll be teaching at Infocom next summer in Las Vegas about rental warehouse operations, or warehouse operations for rental production companies. And this is one of the things that we're going to talk about. How do we change this mindset that my warehouse crew are a bunch of failed technicians who just don't have a show that week, and how that's holding your businesses back. But we've been doing it that way as long as I've been in the industry, and it is fundamentally unsound. And every one of my clients knows that we're going to find a better way of doing it inside their organization. And we do on a regular basis. In finance, add some juice to your finance efforts in your business. You don't have to have a CFO to have a finance department. You know, it might be the owner and the bookkeeper. Do more math. Get regular KPI reports. If the information is useful and it causes you to take action, get the report again. Do it on a regular basis. Also, get cash flow under control. Cash flow is the second most common reason people engage me. You know, and how confident can I be when people are saying, well, we always have cash flow problems, but we'd like to hire you, Tom. And when can you give me money? Well, not right now. We don't have any cash. We got to get your cash flow under control. It starts with PO compliance. If you don't have a strong purchase order system that's transparent and predictive, in other words, you should never receive an invoice from a vendor that there's not a purchase order for. Okay, that would be lack of compliance. You're going to have surprises. You're not going to have control over your cash flow. So we've got to get these things under control. Even a company with 5 employees can be using purchase orders, and it will make their life easier. You'll get your credit card expenses reconciled more quickly. You'll know how profitable you're going to be. You're going to close out a month faster. But most importantly, if you're making mistakes on a regular basis, you will know sooner. So you need to get this under control to keep your cash flow under control. Moving on to management. I still hear a lot of grumbling about management. Oh, we're being a big company. We have all these rules. You know, it's like, no, guys, we've got to stop that grumbling. You know, many of our businesses need to grow up a little bit. We can't, you know, protecting the culture is important, but we don't have to protect past behavior to do that. So having to fill out an expense report, grumble, 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 we're being a big company, it's just a bunch of rules, isn't helpful, okay? You've got to consider that a single level objection from an employee, and you just look them in the eyes and say, look, it's not optional. We are going to do this. And the information allows us to do X, Y, and Z. So stop that grumbling. You don't have to become a big, faceless, soulless company, but you can have some more mature processes and procedures that allow you to make decisions faster, plan for the future better, understand how to make money so that you can pay and retain your employees and maybe have some profit sharing. All of these things are tied together. It can't always be the wild, wild west, because that's where the money shrivels up. And then management. You and also your team need to stop being a hero. Heroics are problematic in small business. A heroic effort can usually be replaced with a reliable process. Now, if we do have some well-needed heroics, let's acknowledge that, but then let's do everything we can to fix the problem that created the need to be a hero. And you in particular, as management, can't be the hero. You should never be the hero. Decentralize heroics. Okay? Share in it. Okay? Make sure other people see where they were part of the heroic effort, and let them help design or redesign the processes to reduce the need for heroics. Heroics are dangerous. They do create some great stories. Heroics to support our customers are wonderful brand stories. But there's often an underlying failure in process and expectations that created that heroic moment, and we want to reduce those things. Our heroics should be for what they call active gods, things that are out of our control. Then we can go the extra mile and save the day. But let's share that credit as much as possible when we tell that story. So I'm going to say a few more things here, and then I've got some final thoughts. But if you any questions you want to type in here, you want to ask more pointed questions about the future or how to do any of the things I just talked about, now is the time to do it. While you're thinking about that, I'll tell you that next month's webinar is called "Don't Wait to See How This Year Will Turn Out." The keys to taking control of your business outcomes before they take over you. The phenomenon that I'm addressing next month is we start the year with all these great expectations about revenue and profit, and then the year starts and we forget about it. And we don't manage to our goals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about managing to those goals. So that'll be on Wednesday the 22nd. Register now. Remember, you don't have to attend the webinar to get access to the recording. Jumpstart workshops. In 2019, this past year, we had 4 Jumpstart workshops. We had 344 attendees at those workshops. There was 158 individuals, so many people attended more than one workshop. We had over 57 companies attend these workshops. So we had people sending as many as 8 people. We have a couple of companies that were sending 8 people to workshops at a time. So we had a great year. So it's with that success in mind that I'm going to announce our 2020 schedule for Jumpstart workshops. And this is on my website, trstimson.com, under the workshop tab. Mark your calendars. We're going to make the first workshop in May. We've had plenty of attendance in May. We're going to keep a workshop in May, but we're going to take strategy and marketing and tie the two together. So we're going to work on devising a business strategy, then immediately connecting it with marketing. So this is designed for owners and head of marketing, head of sales, so that we can connect those things together so that we can get better returns on our strategic thinking by creating marketing plans that support that and deliver results. So those two go hand in hand, so we're going to put them together. In August, we're going to have 2 workshops. One is for sales. I haven't done a sales workshop in a couple of years, and many of you have been asking for it, so I'm very excited to announce Jumpstart Sales August 3 through 5. And this will be focused on the salesperson, the account executive, the account manager, and their managers on how to increase your success as an individual salesperson or a sales team. So very tactically focused on the sales process. We'll have some great guest speakers on that. I'm excited about bringing this one back. We had, 3 years ago, I think we had 50 people attend that one. And that was, at the time, was the highest attended workshop we'd ever had. Now we get 100+ people at workshops, so I'm expecting a huge turnout for this. This will be very, very valuable. Our operations workshop, 17th through the 19th. Again, we will have some new content, but we're going to revisit some of the old standards because obviously we need to keep talking about them. Our operations deliver 100% of our gross profit. Sales delivers revenue, operations delivers gross profit. We're going to show everybody some love in August. And the management workshop will be November 16th through the 18th. Looks like it's pretty clear. I checked all the show dates. Now, it is in November. I know many of you are still working, but this is for management, not the people who actually work for a living. So hopefully we'll have a great turnout like we did this year. So that's our 2020 schedule for workshops. I bring a lot of experience here from my 35+ years in the business, but I've also worked with over 300 companies on their business, which constantly updates and improves my material, my content, and my outlook. My clients make me better every year, and in turn, I share that with you. We bring in more clients, and we get more better. So if you would like to be one of those clients, and might be able to help you grow your business, make it more profitable, help you develop a succession plan or an exit strategy, all the things that we should be doing as business owners, please schedule a quick introductory call. Let's talk about how that works. I have some very easy, inexpensive, or free next steps that you can take to see how we might work together, and I guarantee you'll get something valuable out of the conversation, whether we end up working together or not. So it's free. I love talking to you folks, so please schedule a call. Go to my website, find the contact page, and let's get to talking. I'm going to answer a few questions here, but I want to leave you with my final thought, because I often forget this. This is one of my favorite quotes from Tom Stoppard, who is one of my favorite playwrights. We cross our bridges when we come to them and burn them behind us with nothing to show for our progress, except a memory of the smell of smoke and a presumption that our eyes once watered. So what this means to me, I hope this will mean to you, is that the future happens to you whether you want it to or not. The more we can learn about the future, the better we will be in the present. In life and in business, be prepared, look ahead, and reevaluate your goals often. Take a path you can look back on and be proud of. All of that is in that quote to me. This is one of those things that's on my screen all the time, because I think it's very, very important. The future happens to you whether you want it to or not. Now, so we got a little bit of time left here. Let me answer a couple of questions. I'll start from the bottom here because that's where I'm at. Regarding outsourced labor pools, are you having companies utilize resources for general tech, stagehands, or top A1, B1 type people? Are these extra resources really reflect core company internal labor resources? So the answer to your question is yes. I'm seeing these outside labor pools and resources, these consolidators, staffing companies, fill everything from, stagehand labor all the way through department heads, even project managers. You can outsource all of this in the live events industry. This is a well-developed profession. Now, we forget sometimes, because many of you are AV people, as am I, but if you come from an AV background, your perception of the industry is AV-centric, and we've always staffed internally. But my real background started in theater. So in the theater, the entertainment world, the touring world, almost 100% of technical labor is freelance. They're contracted on a show-by-show basis. So freelancing is a well-developed industry in the live events world. AV people have been the last to come to this marketplace and understand the value of that and how important it is for your business to outsource as much of this as possible. So they can represent your company well, which is always a concern. You just have to do a good job of finding the right sources of people. And again, the referral network is important here. But if you don't have good marketing and good branding, it's very difficult for you to express what you're trying to convey to your customers through your freelancers. So if you come in and you're messy and disorganized and you treat your freelancers poorly, guess what? They're going to treat your customers poorly, because you've shown them how to do it. But if you take good care of your freelance staff, you treat them like professionals, create professional expectations and support, you will find that they will reflect you very, very well to your customers. So all of it's out there. Some markets you're going to have to work harder at developing it than others, but you can't not develop it anymore. Even in a market, and I've had a couple of clients, and I'd be happy to share them with you if you'll call me, who have, in markets where you would think there is absolutely no freelance pool, effectively replace 80% of their technical staff with freelancers. You can develop a freelance talent pool in any market. You have the tools and resources to do it. I strongly recommend it. Consider that. Next question. A question here about developing a sales organization. I need a better sales strategy. Some comments here about managing a team. All right. I just had a call like this with a client, so I've got notes handy. So let me talk a little bit about sales strategy. The first thing I do to develop a sales strategy is I need to analyze my current sales by revenue type. So this is a great end of the year project. Look at your types of revenue, not the person who sold it, not the person who bought it, but what the type of revenue is. Rental revenue is rental revenue regardless of who the buyer was. Full service production is full service production regardless of who the buyer was. So look at the types of revenue. Then look at the channel who bought it. So full service production could be bought by an end customer. It could be bought by a production manager, an event planner, or a marketing manager. These are channels. So understand the revenue type, understand the channels, and then understand the margins that you get from that business and how much of a share it makes up for your organization. So in other words, analyze your current sales. Now, without looking at the team that you have, design a team to support the sales that you want and you want to do more of so that you can grow your business. Now, you will probably go to the current team you have and try and staff it based on that design. And then the next thing we're going to do, we have current sales, we designed a team, then we're going to work on growing sales. How do we increase the sales that we want? It's very important that we go after low-hanging fruit instead of going after new business or new markets when we haven't maximized what we currently have. And the fourth thing you have to do is figure out how to measure progress. So how do we measure progress? If we have a revenue type in a channel that we're trying to increase, that's easy to measure. But we have to go back and measure it, measure those successes. So that's the basic approach to developing a proper sales strategy. It starts first with forensics and then planning. Forensics, organization, planning, and measuring will get you to a better outcome. Something I'm happy to help you guys with. Give me a call. We'll talk about how I can work on that with you. Let me get one more question here. Let's get a question I can answer in 60 seconds. All right. How do we turn strategy into marketing? Well, okay. I want to speak to this mainly because we have an entire workshop where we're going to work on turning strategy into marketing in May. So let me give you a little bit of teaser about how we do that. Our objective here is to create a marketable strategy so that we can turn strategy into marketing. The three things I look at first are, what is my existing brand? Okay. Are you the brand that you want to be? Do we have to make improvements to convey the brand that we want to have? I need to look at who my target customer is. Who is it that I want to care about my brand? Who is it that I want to do business with? And then we look at the strategy of how you're going to win that business. And the constraints to marketing are this brand, the target customer, and the strategy. Marketing doesn't create these things. Marketing leverages them. So if marketing will tell you, if you'll just tell me who your target customer is, I'll tell you what to do. But they also need to know what your brand is so they can reinforce that and what your business growth strategy is. So we've got to get those three things tied. And those constrain marketing. Now, marketing has a huge palette of things that they can do to be more attractive to the right kind of customer with these branding messages to develop business that fits this growth strategy. And all of those things have to connect, and we have to constantly go back and measure what we're doing in marketing to see, one, make sure that we're complying with the constraints of this overall business strategy, this marketable strategy, and then two, are we delivering the results that we need? Marketing is a lot of testing, it's a lot of trying things and see what works and do more of it. There is not a guaranteed do this and it will work. There is not a straight line. If I push $100,000 into this marketing effort, it is going to yield this $1 million worth of business. It's never worked that way. But there are some correlations between what you spend and what you get if you have the right brand, target, and strategy well identified. Okay. Good follow-up question to this is that, have you seen success with engaging third-party marketing agency instead of building out in-house? Absolutely. For most of you, going to a third party to do marketing is probably the right way to go. There's a number of avenues to do this, but don't confuse people who do web development with people who do your marketing. They're not the same thing. Web development is a subset, it's a product or a tactic within a marketing plan. So a lot of web developers tout themselves as marketers. They are not. What you want is a marketing person who can speak to web development. And you may have somebody else doing the web development, but you want the marketing plan. So a fractional CMO, a fractional chief marketing officer, these are available for all sizes of organizations. There's an entire association of fractional CMOs. These are very hireable. These are people that will help you develop the right strategy and then connect you into the right organizations or the companies to do the tactical execution of this. So yes, there's definitely something you can look out of house to do, and it's certainly worth the effort to do that. Again, something that many of my clients, we talk about this. We work with, I have several clients that do this. I do have some marketing strategists that I recommend. So all of this is very achievable. Let's have a conversation about it. So, all right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me for yet another one of these. I've enjoyed this, and I've been doing webinars now. I've lost track. It's been a decade. But it is a highlight of my month. I really do enjoy it. I wish I had time to do more of these things, so I thank you for participating. Watch your email. You'll get the note on how to watch this archive, probably about this time tomorrow, maybe a little bit later. And share it with your friends, share it with your team, and we will see you again next month. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. We'll talk to you guys soon.